Now in this next part, I want to cover the difference between when you have a problem that says x equals square root of 25 versus x squared equals 25. Now over here on the left side, when it's x equals 25, square root of 25, that means that you only have one solution that the square root of 25 can equal to, because again, this is basically doing the principal root where x equals the square root of 25, it simply means x equal to 5. Now over here on the right side, and you'll see the difference between the two types of problems. In order to solve for x squared equals to 25, you would do the opposite of square, which is the square root. So basically, I'm going to do the square root of the left side. Since you're doing the square root of the left side, you got to do the same operation. So square root on the right side. Now, at the moment, it's look very similar to this particular problem. But again, I want to state that these two are not exactly the same. They can be similar, but not exactly the same. And you see why according to the answer that you'll get here. Now, when you do the square root of x squared, then that would just simply become x. And then here, since you're solving for x squared, that means that you have potentially a positive and a negative root. So the square root of 25 would be a positive and a negative 5. And you'll see why. So let's go back to the original problem, which is x squared equals to 25. Now, here we stated that x equals to positive negative 5. That means you have two answers. So x will equal to a positive 5 and x equals to a negative 5. So let's say that we're going to test both solutions. So the first one is x equals to positive 5. So if I plug into the x, so positive 5 parentheses with the square, suppose it equals to 25. So 5 squared, 5 times 5 is 25, which is correct. So this one checks out. Now, the other one, negative 5, so I'm going to plug in negative 5 into the original equation, the x. So negative 5, parentheses, the square, and supposedly equals to 25. So negative 5 squared, that means it's negative 5 times negative 5. Negative 5 times negative 5 is a positive 25. So it does equal to 25, and it checks out. So that means that our final solution for this particular problem is x equals to positive and negative 5. And then let me box that up. So here, I wanted to show the difference between when you're solving where it says x equals the square root of 25 versus where it's x squared equals to 25. When I'm solving for this one, I have to square root both sides so that I can get x, and then when you do the square root of a number, here we got positive and negative 5. Whereas over here, it's just simply x equal to square root of 25. When you see a problem like that, that means you're just looking for the principal root, so your only solution is x equals 5. Whereas over here, we have two solutions, x equals to positive 5 and negative 5, and I show you by testing out 5 and negative 5, it equals to 25. That means that these two solutions works, and they're part of our final answer, which is x equals positive negative 5. So make sure to be aware on how the structure of the question is given to you. X equals to square root of 25, you're just doing the principal root. X squared equals to 25, meaning you have to do the square root. Possible is that you're going to find the negative and positive root. So make sure you know the difference. In this example, we have x squared equals to 64. So when you're solving for x, so in order to get x alone, meaning I need to get rid of the square, the opposite is square root. So I'm going to square root the left side. Then doing the same thing, square root the right side. So the square root of x squared will be just x. And since I'm solving for x, and we start off as x squared equals to 64, that means you're looking for two solutions, which is positive and negative 8. So my final solution is x equals to positive and negative 8. Since I'm solving for x, and we start off with the question x squared equals to 64, that means that when you plug in positive 8, it will work, and when you plug in negative 8, it will also work. So that's why we have two final solution, positive and negative 8. In this example, we have x squared equals to 16 over 25. So in this case, we have a fraction. And then I'm going to show you how to simplify when finding the square root of a fraction. Make sure to take note of how to simplify and taking the square root of a fraction. So just like before, when you're solving for x, I'm going to take the square root of the left side. Therefore, I'm going to take the square root of the right side. So it's going to be the square root of x squared is simply x. Now, when you're doing the square root of a fraction, especially when it's a division, we can split the square root into two, meaning you can do the square root of 16 in the numerator over the square root of 25. So when it's a fraction and you're doing the square root of the whole fraction, you can split it. Now I have two square roots, square root of 16 and square root of 25. So let's simplify into parts. So in the first one, square root of 16, we're going to do the numerator first. The square root of 16, since we're solving, before we do the square root of 16, since we're solving for x squared, you should know that you're doing and solving for two solutions, which is the positive and negative roots. Now, for the square root of 16, since we have the positive and negative, we're just going to find the root of 16, which is just 4. Now, for the denominator, square root of 25, we're just going to find the root, the number. So the square root of 25 is 5. And remember, this is a fraction. So x is equal to positive and negative 4 over 5. So to review, we're solving for x squared and it equals to 16 over 25. We did the square root on both sides and end up with square root of 16 over square root of 25. Then again, we know that since we're solving for x squared, we're going to have a positive and negative solution. Next, I did the square root of the numerator, so square root of 16 is 4. Then I did the square root of the denominator, square root of 25 is 5. So my final solution is x equal positive and negative 4 over 5. So that is my final solution. In this example, we have x squared equals 3 over 49. So when you're solving for x, just like before, take the square root of both sides. So we're going to have x equals, now since you're solving for x squared, that means you're going to have a positive and negative solution. And since it's a fraction, you can split it into two square roots. So square root of 3 in the numerator over the square root of 49. Now let's take a look at it in two parts. So in the numerator, the square root of 3. Well, 3 is not a perfect square number, so that means that we can't find the square root of it. And since you cannot find a square root, nor you can simplify, it's going to stay the same. Meaning, in the numerator, it's going to stay as square root of 3. Now for the denominator, 49 is a perfect square, meaning that we can do the square root of 49, which is 7. So, this particular example, the numerator, we couldn't find the square root of 3, so it stayed as square root of 3. but in the denominator you can find a square root, which is just 7. So our final answer is x equal positive or negative square root of 3 over 7. And that would be our final answer. So in our solution, we have one part where it stays as inside the square root, which is the square root of 3. But again, it's still, since you're solving for x squared, you still have two solutions, one positive root and one negative root. So make sure you remember that.